The frontier station of KL-9 hung in the void like a rusted promise, its corridors filled with the whispers of 100 species trying to coexist. Arya Ven had learned long ago that survival meant keeping her head down and her emotions buried deeper than the station's core. Humans were still the newcomers here, the soft-skinned curiosities who had stumbled into a galaxy that had been carved up by claws and fangs long before Earth had even discovered fire. She was carrying medical supplies through the lower market district when she heard the sound a keening wail that cut through the babel of alien languages like a blade through silk. Arya's steps faltered. The crowd around her parted instinctively, creating a circle of empty space that no one dared to cross. In the center lay a small form, no larger than a human child. Its fur was silver blue, matted with blood that pooled beneath its broken body. The cub's eyes were glazing over, its breathing shallow and rattling. Above it, the station's lights flickered, casting shadows that danced like mourners. Arya recognized the species immediately. Vorathian, the apex predators of the Outer Rim, warriors bred for battle, whose honor codes were written in the scars they bore. Their empire had crushed 17 civilizations before the Galactic Council had brokered an uneasy peace. They did not forgive. They did not forget. And they did not tolerate weakness. Around the market's perimeter, she could see them gathering. Vorathian alphas, their 7-foot frames encased in ceremonial armor that gleamed like midnight. Each carried a photon lance, weapons that could pierce a battlecruiser's hull. Their faces were hidden behind helmets carved to resemble the skulls of their ancient prey. But Arya could feel their eyes on the dying cub. And on her. The child had fallen from one of the upper platforms, witnesses said. An accident during play. But accidents meant nothing to the Vorathians. A cub that could not survive a fall was a cub that would weaken the pack. This was their law, written in blood and bone across 1,000 conquered worlds. Arya's hands tightened on her supply case. Every instinct screamed at her to walk away, to let nature, or whatever cruel philosophy governed this species, take its course. The Council's first rule for humans was clear. Do not interfere with indigenous cultural practices. Humanity was on probation, still proving they deserved a seat at the galactic table. But the cub whimpered, and something ancient in Arya's chest cracked open. She stepped forward. The crowd's murmur died instantly. Somewhere, a merchant's holographic display sputtered and went dark. Arya felt the weight of 100 alien stares, but she kept moving, kept walking toward the small broken body at the center of the circle. Human. The voice was like grinding stone, spoken in perfect galactic standard. Alpha Threx, the pack leader, stepped forward from the ring of warriors. His armor bore the scars of countless battles, and his lance hummed with barely contained energy. You will stop. Arya didn't stop. She knelt beside the cub, her knees touching the cold station floor, heedless of the blood that soaked into her pants. Up close, she could see the child was male. Perhaps 3 cycles old by Vorathian standards. His eyes found hers, filled with pain and confusion, and something that transcended species fear. This is not your concern, Alpha Threx said, but he hadn't raised his lance. Not yet. Our law is clear. The weak are released to the void. This is the way of strength. Arya's hands moved with practiced efficiency, pulling a medical scanner from her case. The cub's injuries were severe. Fractured spine, internal bleeding, collapsed lung, treatable, with the right equipment. But treatment wasn't the issue here. Your law, she said quietly, not looking up from her work, is your own. But I'm human. And we have a different law. She could hear the alphas moving closer, their armor plates clicking in synchronized threat. The photon lances were powering up now, their characteristic whine filling the air. Arya's heart hammered against her ribs. But her hands remained steady as she applied a coagulant patch to the cub's worst wound. You dare speak of your laws in the presence of Vorathian justice? Alpha Threx's voice was closer now, directly above her. Your species is barely out of its cradle. You know nothing of strength, nothing of the discipline required to forge an empire. Arya finally looked up, meeting the dark visor of the Alpha's helmet. You're right, she said. We're young, Weak, by your standards. We've barely explored our own star system, let alone conquered others. We have no empires, no warrior codes written in the bones of our enemies. She turned back to the cub, whose breathing was stabilizing slightly under her care. But we do have this. And then, with the entire market watching, with a dozen photon lances trained on her back, Arya Ven leaned down and pressed her lips to the cub's forehead. It was a gentle kiss. The kind a mother might give a frightened child. The kind that said, "You are not alone. You are not forgotten. You are worthy of love, simply because you exist." The cub's eyes widened, and a small sound escaped his throat, not pain, but something like wonder. The silence that followed was absolute. Arya pulled back, meeting Alpha Threx's visor again. "We call it compassion," she said. "And maybe it makes us weak. Maybe it's why we'll never build an empire like yours, but it's also why we'll never abandon our children to die alone on cold metal floors." For a long moment, nothing moved. The market seemed frozen in time, every being holding their breath. Then Alpha Threx did something no one expected. He lowered his lance. The photon whine died, and the weapon's tip touched the ground in a gesture that every species in the galaxy recognized: surrender. Not defeat, but acknowledgement. Around the circle, one by one, the other alphas followed suit. 11 lances lowered, 11 warriors standing down. Alpha Threx reached up and removed his helmet, revealing a face that was all sharp angles and battle scars, with eyes that burned like dying stars. "I have conquered 17 worlds," he said, his voice rough with something that might have been emotion. "I have led my pack through the fires of war and emerged victorious. I know strength in all its forms." He looked down at the cub, then back at Arya. "But I have never seen anyone face certain death for a stranger's child. Is this truly common among your kind?" Arya thought of every human who had ever run into a burning building, every parent who had ever shielded their child with their own body, every stranger who had ever stopped to help another in need. "Common enough," she said. The Alpha was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached down and, with surprising gentleness, lifted the cub into his massive arms. "You will help me save him," he said. It wasn't a question. "I will," Arya replied. As they made their way toward the medical bay, the crowd parting before them, Alpha Threx spoke again. "The Council fears your species. Human Arya Ven. They see your technological weakness and believe you are no threat. But I have seen empires rise and fall. I know what truly builds civilizations, and what destroys them." He looked down at the cub in his arms, who had reached up with one small paw to grip his armor plate. "It is not the strength of our weapons that defines us. It is what we choose to protect." Behind them, the other alphas fell into formation, their lances lowered in a guard of honor that had never been given to a human before. In the years that followed, when humans finally took their place among the great powers of the galaxy, historians would debate what moment truly changed the Council's perception of Earth. Some pointed to humanity's first successful defense of an allied world. Others cited their revolutionary technological breakthroughs. But the Vorathians knew better. They remembered the day a soft-skinned human with no weapons and no armor had knelt beside a dying cub and shown them what strength really meant. And in the grand halls of the Vorathian homeworld, where honor and glory were celebrated in stone and song, there was a new statue, a human woman kissing a child's forehead, while around her, the greatest warriors in the galaxy lowered their lances in respect.